This is just a horizontal diagram, so let's, to get a clearer concept of it, put it into a vertical, the same process from a vertical perspective. And this is the overall image, and this is the little box that I've translated up here for the sake of clarity. So this is an analogy of the tell and the archaeological dig with the spiritual journey. Now, a tell, as I'm sure you're all aware, is a spot on the landscape, a hill, a hump, that consists of the remains of city-states or civilizations, one built on top of the other. For some reason in those days, if you burnt down a town, you built your own on top. So from an archaeological point of view, it's a treasure, because in one place they can dig down through civilizations all the way down to the Stone Age. So the process, of course, is to clear off the top first, and shovel off the junk and the shards that are broken and things that are of no use, and then come back a year later and work this level and then this level. Now, the analogy is that the Holy Spirit seems to have a certain method to its madness. And that is, although it doesn't feel bound to follow a particular structure, it adjusts to each person. It starts out our conversion when we decide to pursue the transformative process by clearing off the obvious conscious junk that is obvious to us as hindering our process. And it adds those aspects of a discipline or a meditative practice that will help this process to go on. So wherever you start, let's say we start in our old age. You could start any time. It's never too late for this process. And so the Holy Spirit investigates or brings to our attention what needs to be improved at that point. And then it continues the process with a little rest or enjoyment of the new privileges of each state of life, or the new freedom, to work down, let us say, through adulthood, early adulthood, adolescence, childhood, infancy, until each part of our life has been healed or investigated. And each time the group of archaeologists will throw out the junk and send the good stuff, the beautiful artworks and the mosaics, to the British Museum or some other place similar. So that all that is good, even though it was mixed up with a lot of junk at each level of our historical life, is recovered. And it may be that the Spirit then invites us to recapitulate, at least in our spiritual insight, the whole of our life, and gives us back some of the things that we weren't able to pursue that were good, but that we hesitated because of the situation we were in then to make use of. So that the bottom line is that everything that was good in your life begins to bloom or flourish. But the interesting point that I'd like to leave with you is that the closer you come to the original source of the trauma, which is infancy, or perhaps even experiences in the womb, the worse you think you're becoming. And so this is not a success story, the spiritual journey. This is not a climb, so to speak, but rather a gradual acceptance and comfort with reality just as it is, and our personal history just as it was, and our present limitations just as they are, with the freedom to make use of things now without being bound or dominated by them. So over-identification with our feelings or our thoughts are not taken away completely, but so diminished that they no longer dominate us, and we don't find ourselves in mood. And when you're angry as you reach the deeper levels of purification, you can be more angry than you ever were in your false self state. But it goes away of itself in a half a minute or something. In other words, it doesn't dominate it. And this is one of the signs of considerable progress in the sense of getting free of the false self and the emotional energy that we put into it. Well, one final diagram, which is to put together the vertical and the horizontal information that we offered in the last two diagrams. So here, the level of first conversion, it says here, would be this middle program. And this is a spiral, which is a favorite image in our time of other things too. But this is the downward movement that we saw expressed in the analogy of the tell, where step by step we experience an alternation in which we experience the purification of the unconscious. Sometimes I've suggested the term the unloading of the unconscious, because it's like getting rid of a load of junk that doesn't belong there. And then after that, there's a period of transition from one level to another, with a plateau in between of rest and refreshment, in which one has time to integrate the new insight, whether psychological or spiritual, into the whole of life, our relationship with God, ourselves, other people. And this takes some time, and you can't rush this thing. God has an incredible patience and seems to wait for the right moment, sometimes a long time, in which you're most likely to consent to the insight that is to be communicated. Usually it's freedom from some compulsion or addictive attitude or process that has burdened you from the beginning. So this is not punishment. This is an enormous gift or reward. It's the gift of ultimate health that deals with the very sources of illness and takes them away over time. But notice, at the same time that you experience and accept one of those experiences of primitive emotions or weakness or powerlessness, and it's evacuated, immediately this upper spiral is activated, and one begins to have what might be called a moment of inner resurrection. In other words, the false self has been humiliated, the true self is exalted in the same process. Not necessarily right away, because sometimes it takes some weeks or months or a few years to complete a certain purification process. But in the other direction, the experience of resurrection is certain if one's accept this. Of what happens. And so this begins to express then this upper movement. The ontological unconscious begins to become conscious, and the supernatural organism begins to function. And so faith, hope, and love, what are theologically called the theological virtues, begin to grow and to be purified of the human motives involved in them. And as this occurs, the fruits and gifts of the Spirit emerge, which are spontaneous ways of living that involve our consent, but nonetheless are inspired by the Spirit within us, who is replacing now the false self as our centers of motivation. So as we descend this level goes up. So they're both happening at once, and this diagram doesn't quite express that. If you could imagine a spiral situation like this, or like a calyx, something like the two strands of the DNA or something, or the Kundalini energy, Shiva and Shakti. Well, one is going down and one is going up at the same time. That would be the advantage if I could draw such a picture. But someone made a model of that, and it's very effective. As you can see light going down, and you can see the going up at the same time. So down is up and up is down. And so you can't humble yourself without being exalted, and you can't exalt yourself without being humbled. And so this becomes a circle in which you arrive at the same place, whichever spiral you're emphasizing, and you find purity of heart, the emptying out of the unconscious junk of a lifetime, and the transforming union, which is the full development of grace and the supernatural organism, and the results of which move us towards the experience of oneness